I walked out of Mark's office in a complete daze. My legs moved automatically toward the elevator, but my brain was still stuck on his words. Not in this quarter's budget, Lauren. Headcount freeze across the board. The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside, grateful to be alone. That's when it hit me. The rage. The humiliation. The crushing weight of betrayal. I'd worked myself to exhaustion for 3 years, picking up Mark's slack, leading projects he took credit for, staying late while he left early. And this was my reward? A budget excuse? My phone buzzed. A text from someone in finance. Congrats on the promotion. Heard the news. I stared at the message, confusion mixing with my anger. Wrong person, I typed back. They must mean someone else. But even as I sent it, something nagged at me. Why would anyone think I'd gotten promoted? The elevator doors opened on the lobby, and I walked out into the cool evening air, my mind spinning with questions I couldn't yet answer. 3 months earlier, everything had seemed fine. I was leading the biggest campaign our department had ever handled. The Reynolds account was worth millions, and Mark had assigned it to me personally. You're my best, he'd said with that charming smile. What he didn't mention was that he'd be absent for most of it. Every strategy session, every late night debugging the analytics dashboard, every client crisis. That was all me. Mark would swoop in for the final presentations, shaking hands and accepting praise. I told myself it was normal. Directors delegate. That's leadership. But during one team meeting, I'd stepped out to take a call from the client. When I came back, I heard Mark's voice through the door. Lauren's steady, reliable. But let's be honest, she's not exactly irreplaceable. The words hit me like cold water. I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand on the door handle. Inside, people laughed. I never mentioned what I'd heard. I just worked harder, convinced that results would speak louder than his casual cruelty. That's when Brittany joined our team. She was 24, fresh from grad school, enthusiastic but inexperienced. Mark called me into his office the day she started. I need you to train her, he said. Show her the ropes. You're great at that mentoring stuff. I agreed because that's what team players do. Brittany was sweet and eager to learn. I taught her our systems, introduced her to key stakeholders, and included her in my project meetings. She absorbed everything like a sponge. Mark, meanwhile, took a different approach. He invited her to executive lunches. Gave her FaceTime with senior leadership. Praised her publicly for work we'd done together. I noticed but said nothing. Then one afternoon, I walked past the conference room and saw Brittany inside, alone, holding up her phone. On the screen was a mock-up of a business card. Director of Operations, it read. Brittany Cole. She was smiling at it, practicing how she'd introduce herself. My stomach dropped. I kept walking, my mind racing with questions I was afraid to ask. 2 weeks after that conversation about my promotion, I couldn't let it go. I asked Mark again during our one-on-one. About that director role, I started carefully. Is there a timeline for when headcount might open up? He barely looked up from his laptop. Lauren, I already told you. Budget's frozen. Nothing I can do. He said it like I was being unreasonable for asking. But that same afternoon, I saw a company-wide message in our Slack channel. 4 new positions approved across different departments. 2 managers. 1 senior analyst. 1 director-level role in marketing. I took a screenshot before I could stop myself. My hands were shaking. If there was a headcount freeze, why were other departments hiring? I opened a new folder on my personal drive and saved the image. I labeled it simply, Questions. Something was very wrong, and I was done pretending I didn't notice. That night, I started a resignation letter but couldn't finish it. Not yet. I needed to understand what was really happening first. The truth came during a random IT support call. I'd been having issues with my system permissions and called the help desk at 9 p.m., long after everyone else had gone home. The technician, Kyle, was chatty and helpful. While fixing my access, he mentioned something casually. "Oh, I see you got a peer added to your role. Brittany Cole, right? Her title was upgraded last month." I froze. Upgraded to what? Same level as you. Senior Operations Manager. Happened pretty quietly. Usually there's an announcement. There hadn't been an announcement. Not to me, anyway. I thanked Kyle and hung up, my heart pounding. Mark had elevated Brittany to my level without telling me. We were now supposedly equals, except I'd been doing this job for 3 years and she'd been here for 3 months. I pulled up the org chart on our internal system. There it was. Brittany Cole, Senior Operations Manager, reporting to Mark Henderson, Director. Right beside my name. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. Then I deleted my resignation letter draft. I wasn't leaving. Not like this. The quarterly business review was mandatory for all senior staff. Mark presented our department's achievements with his usual confidence. Slide after slide showcased the Reynolds campaign. My campaign. Every strategy, every metric, every success. He talked about our approach and the team's innovation. Brittany sat beside him, nodding along, smiling at the executives. Not once did he mention my name. But he made a mistake. On slide 14, buried in the footnotes, were my initials. LC, Project Lead and Primary Strategist. The VP of Operations, Patricia Alvarez, leaned forward. "Who's LC?" she asked. The room went quiet. Mark hesitated for just a second. "Oh, that's Lauren Cole. She supported the execution phase." Supported. The word burned. Patricia looked directly at me. "Lauren, this is impressive work. Why haven't we heard more about your role in this?" I kept my voice steady. "I've been focused on delivery, not presentation." She nodded slowly, something calculating in her expression. "We should talk more about that." The meeting ended, but Patricia's question hung in the air. Someone had finally noticed. A few days later, Amanda from product development caught me in the break room. We'd worked together on a cross-functional project the year before. "Lauren, hey. Question for you. Why aren't you applying for the director opening?" I looked at her blankly. "What opening?" Her eyebrows shot up. "The Director of Operations role. It posted last week. Internal candidates encouraged to apply. I just assumed you'd be the front runner." My coffee suddenly tasted like ash. "I didn't know it was posted." Amanda's expression shifted to concern. "That's weird. It's been on the careers portal for 6 days." The moment she left, I rushed back to my desk and pulled up the internal job board. There it was. Director of Operations. Posted 6 days ago. Reports to SVP. Salary range significantly higher than mine. Preferred qualifications that matched my resume perfectly. I read it 3 times, my anger building with each word. Mark had never mentioned this. Not once. I clicked the apply button, my heart hammering. I was absolutely qualified. This was my shot. Then the screen refreshed with an error message that made my blood run cold. Access denied. Position closed to internal candidates. I stared at the message, refreshing the page twice. The job was still listed as open. Applications accepted until next Friday. But I couldn't apply. I called HR immediately. The rep, Steven, sounded confused. "That's strange. Let me check your employee status." Keyboard clicks. "Everything looks normal on your profile. Maybe it's a system glitch? I'll submit a ticket." But I knew it wasn't a glitch. Someone had specifically blocked my access. I sat there, frozen, trying to process what this meant. Then I saw Brittany walking past my desk, coming from Mark's office. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. But she was smiling. That strange combination of emotions stopped me cold. She saw me watching and quickly looked away, hurrying toward the elevator. What had just happened in Mark's office? I pulled up my email and started searching through old messages, looking for anything that might explain this. That's when I found them. Forwarded emails. My project summaries, my strategy documents, my client notes. All sent from Mark to senior leadership with no attribution. Just his name in the sender field. I spent the weekend building a file. Everything went into a folder I labeled simply Work History. Screenshots of emails where Mark forwarded my deliverables with no mention of my name. Calendar invites showing who actually led which meetings. Project documentation with my digital signature buried in the metadata. Performance reviews, all excellent, each one praising my strategic thinking and leadership. Client feedback specifically mentioning me by name. I organized it chronologically, color-coded by category. Gaslighting. Credit theft. Unethical management practices. Favoritism. By Sunday night, I had 47 pieces of documentation. I encrypted the folder and backed it up in 3 places. My personal cloud. A thumb drive. And I emailed it to my personal address with the subject line insurance. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet. But I knew I needed leverage. Monday morning, Mark called a team meeting. He announced that Brittany would be taking the lead on our next major project. Lauren will support her, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. Good development opportunity for both of you. I smiled and nodded. Inside, I was done playing along. The team happy hour was Mark's idea. Mandatory fun, he called it. We gathered at a downtown bar, everyone trying to relax after a brutal week. I nursed a single drink, staying quiet, observing. Mark was holding court as usual, telling stories that made him the hero. Then he shifted to jokes. Management jokes. You know, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, some people are just born to be individual contributors. Nothing wrong with that. Lauren here, for example. Solid worker, but can you imagine her running a department? Everyone laughed. Brittany laughed too, but it looked forced. No offense, Lauren, Mark added, raising his glass. You're great at what you do. The condescension dripped from every word. I set down my drink and stood up. Excuse me, I said quietly. I walked out of the bar without looking back. The cool night air hit my face, and I realized my hands were shaking with rage. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Lauren, wait. It was Brittany, slightly out of breath. I'm so sorry. That was completely inappropriate. I turned to face her. You laughed. Her face crumpled. I know. I'm sorry. Can we talk? Please. There's something you need to know. We sat on a bench outside the bar. Brittany looked genuinely miserable. Mark promised me the director position 3 months ago, she said quietly. Before I even started. He told me you trained up to your ceiling. That you weren't interested in leadership anymore. I let that sink in. And you believed him? I did. I'm sorry. He made it sound like you'd chosen to stay in your current role. Like it was mutual. She pulled out her phone. But this week, I realized he lied to both of us. He's been manipulating the situation from the start. She turned her screen toward me. Text messages. Dozens of them. Mark promising her the promotion, telling her to keep quiet, asking her to take credit for work that wasn't hers. He wanted someone controllable, Brittany said. Someone who owed him everything. Someone who wouldn't question his decisions. I looked at the messages, my mind racing. Can you send these to me? She nodded. I already did. Your personal email. Lauren, I'm not proud of this, but I'm not going to let him destroy your career to build mine. For the first time in months, I felt something other than anger. I felt hope. The Mark dossier grew daily. Every inconsistency. Every lie. Every time he claimed credit for someone else's work. I documented his pattern of promoting less qualified people who wouldn't challenge him. His habit of excluding senior team members from important meetings. The way he managed up brilliantly while managing down terribly. I cross-referenced everything with dates, emails, and witnesses. Brittany sent me more evidence. Recordings of conversations where Mark had explicitly told her to downplay my contributions. Screenshots of him editing project reports to remove my name. Even a voicemail where he joked about keeping Lauren in her place. I didn't share the file with anyone yet. I was waiting for the right moment. Then Patricia Alvarez, the VP, sent me a calendar invite. Subject line, career development discussion. Just the two of us. 30 minutes. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. I stared at the invitation for a long time. This was either an opportunity or a trap. I accepted the meeting and spent that evening rehearsing what I'd say. How much truth could I tell? How much should I hold back? By midnight, I'd made my decision. If she asked, I'd tell her everything. Patricia's office was on the executive floor, all glass walls and modern furniture. She gestured for me to sit, then closed the door. Lauren, I'll be direct. Are you happy in your current role? The question caught me off guard. I could lie, play politics, protect myself. But I was tired of pretending. No, I said. I'm not happy. But I'm very good at what I do. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. Why aren't you happy? I chose my words carefully. I've been leading major projects for 3 years. Training new hires. Managing client relationships. Driving strategy. But when it comes to recognition or advancement, there's always a reason why it's not the right time. Patricia nodded slowly. And you think that's specific to your situation? I think my director has a vested interest in keeping me exactly where I am. The words hung between us. Patricia's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. That's a serious observation. I have serious documentation. She stood up, signaling the meeting was ending. The SVP is conducting a review of departmental structures and promotion practices. Someone will be in touch. As I left her office, my heart was pounding. I'd just made my move. Now I had to wait. The announcement came Friday afternoon. All staff email from the SVP. We are conducting a comprehensive audit of departmental budgets, promotion practices, and organizational efficiency. Department heads will be asked to provide detailed documentation over the next 2 weeks. I read it 3 times. This was it. The opening I needed. Around the office, people speculated about what it meant. Most assumed it was routine corporate procedure. But I knew better. Patricia had taken what I said seriously. Monday morning, Mark was uncharacteristically friendly. He stopped by my desk with coffee, asked about my weekend, complimented my work on a recent report. Hey, Lauren, I've been thinking. Maybe we were too hasty about that promotion conversation. Let's revisit it after this audit wraps up. I smiled blandly. Sure, Mark. Whenever you're ready. He lingered, clearly wanting me to seem grateful. When I didn't react, he walked away looking unsettled. That afternoon, I received an encrypted email from an address I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I found a simple message. Documentation of budget discrepancies attached. This never came from me. The attachment showed training fund allocations. Thousands of dollars approved for development programs that never happened. All approved by Mark Henderson. Someone else was helping me. Someone inside the system who also wanted Mark exposed. Mark called me into his office Wednesday morning. He was holding a performance review form. My name was at the top, but the rest was blank. Lauren, we need to talk about some concerns. My stomach tightened. What concerns? Your performance has been slipping. Missing deadlines. Quality issues. I need to document this officially. He slid the blank form across his desk. Every box empty. No specific examples. No dates. No evidence. I need you to sign this acknowledging we've discussed these issues. I looked at the form, then at him. This form is blank, Mark. There are no specific issues documented. Just sign it. We'll fill in the details later. No. He blinked. Excuse me? I won't sign a blank performance review. If you have specific concerns, document them with examples and dates. Then we can discuss. His face reddened. This is insubordination, Lauren. I stood up, pulling out my phone. This conversation is being recorded. For my protection. The color drained from his face. You can't record me without permission. Minnesota is a one-party consent state. I can absolutely record conversations I'm part of. Now, do you have documented performance concerns, or is this meeting over? He stared at me, trapped. Get out. I left with the recording saved in 3 places. The audit results started leaking within a week. First came the budget discrepancies. Training funds that Mark had approved but never allocated to actual training. A bonus payment to Brittany that wasn't authorized through proper channels. Consultation fees paid to a company that didn't seem to exist. HR called Mark in for questioning. He emerged 2 hours later looking shaken. That afternoon, he tried to throw Brittany under the bus. An email to HR and the SVP, CCING the whole leadership team. Upon review, I believe these financial irregularities stem from poor oversight by my senior operations manager, Brittany Cole. She had access to these accounts and may have made unauthorized approvals. I watched the email chain, knowing what came next. 30 minutes later, Brittany replied all. I did not have approval authority for any of these transactions. I'm forwarding documentation showing that all approvals came from Director Henderson. Additionally, I'm sharing communications where he specifically instructed me to process certain payments without standard documentation. Attached were screenshots, emails, and recorded conversations. Mark had tried to make her his scapegoat, but she'd kept receipts. HR responded within an hour. All parties are required to submit relevant documentation by end of business Friday. I sent my folder that night. All 47 pieces of evidence, organized and annotated. The scales were finally tipping. Mark's retaliation was swift and clumsy. Monday morning, I was removed from 3 major project channels. Brittany was added in my place. Meeting invites that used to include me now went only to her. He was trying to isolate me, make me invisible. But he'd miscalculated. Other department heads had been watching the audit closely. They'd seen the evidence. When they needed operations support, they started coming directly to me, bypassing Mark entirely. The product development team invited me to their planning sessions. Finance asked me to consult on a workflow redesign. Customer success wanted my input on their escalation procedures. Mark couldn't shut me out because I'd built relationships across the entire organization. People trusted me. They didn't trust him. Wednesday afternoon, Patricia stopped by my desk. Lauren, don't worry about your project access. We're seeing everything that's happening. She said it quietly, but firmly. It was the first time anyone in leadership had explicitly acknowledged they were watching Mark's behavior. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Whatever was coming, I wasn't facing it alone anymore. Monday morning, HR called me in. My stomach dropped as I walked to their office, wondering if Mark had somehow turned this around. Had he convinced them I was the problem? The HR director, Malcolm Torres, was waiting with a woman I didn't recognize. Lauren, this is Diana Cruz from our legal team. We need to discuss a complaint filed against you. My heart hammered. What complaint? Malcolm slid a document across the table. Mark Henderson has accused you of creating a hostile work environment, insubordination, and unauthorized recording of private conversations. I'd prepared for this. I opened my tablet and pulled up my own folder. I have documentation that directly contradicts these claims. For the next hour, I walked them through everything. The emails showing credit theft. The timeline of blocked promotion opportunities. The blank performance review. The recordings of threatening conversations. Brittany's text messages proving collusion. The budget inconsistencies Mark had tried to hide. When I finished, Malcolm and Diana exchanged a long look. This is considerably more complex than Mr. Henderson indicated, Malcolm said carefully. Diana leaned forward. Lauren, what you presented constitutes evidence of serious policy violations. We'll need to escalate this to the executive team. I nodded. I understand. We appreciate your cooperation. Someone will be in touch soon. As I left, Malcolm called after me. Lauren? Thank you for documenting everything so thoroughly. It makes our job much clearer. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. I almost deleted it. Then I saw the attachment. An organizational chart. Draft version, dated for next month. I enlarged the image with shaking hands. Director of Operations, Lauren Cole. Mark's position showed as vacant pending restructure. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Was this real? Was someone pranking me? Another text came through. From a friend in HR. Thought you should know what's coming. Delete after viewing. I took screenshots anyway, saving them to my encrypted folder. Then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I opened my resignation letter draft, the one I'd written and rewritten and almost sent a dozen times. I selected all the text and hit delete. I wasn't going anywhere. Not now. Not ever. That night, I allowed myself to feel something I'd been afraid to acknowledge. Hope. Real, tangible hope that justice was possible. That doing the right thing mattered. That standing up to a bully could actually work. I slept with my phone on my nightstand, half expecting it all to disappear by morning. But when I woke up, the screenshots were still there. This was really happening. Friday morning started like any other. I arrived at my desk, checked emails, prepared for meetings. Then at 10 a.m., I noticed movement on the executive floor. Through the glass walls, I could see people gathering. The SVP. Patricia. Malcolm from HR, Diana from legal. And Mark. The meeting lasted 45 minutes. I tried to focus on work but kept glancing up. Finally, the conference room door opened. Mark emerged first, his face gray. He didn't look at anyone as he walked quickly toward his office. Patricia stayed behind, talking with the SVP. Their expressions were serious but satisfied. 30 minutes later, 2 security guards appeared. They walked directly to Mark's office and entered. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I watched Mark pack a box with shaking hands. One of the guards carried it while the other escorted Mark toward the elevator. As he passed my desk, our eyes met for just a second. There was no anger in his expression anymore. Just defeat. The elevator doors closed. Mark Henderson was gone. The office was completely silent. Everyone had watched it happen, but no one knew what to say. Brittany sat frozen at her desk, her face pale. Then, exactly 1 hour later, an email notification appeared on everyone's screen. Company-wide announcement. Effective immediately, we are pleased to announce Lauren Cole as Director of Operations. Lauren has demonstrated exceptional leadership, strategic thinking, and commitment to our organizational values. Please join us in congratulating her on this well-deserved promotion. I read the email 3 times. Around the office, people started turning toward me. Some were smiling. Others looked shocked. My phone exploded with messages. Congratulations texts, LinkedIn notifications, emails from colleagues across the company. Brittany walked over to my desk, her eyes red. "You earned this," she said quietly. "Every bit of it." Patricia appeared a few minutes later. "Lauren, can you come with me?" She led me to Mark's former office. The door was open, the space already cleared of his personal items. "This is yours now," Patricia said. "We'll have IT transfer your files and access today. The SVP wants to meet with you Monday morning to discuss your vision for the department." I stood in the doorway, unable to quite believe it was real. My office. My department. My title. Patricia put a hand on my shoulder. "You handled this with remarkable integrity. That's why you're here." After she left, I walked to the desk and sat down slowly. The chair was too high. The desk was too clean. But it was mine. I'd fought for it. I'd documented everything. I'd stood up when it would have been easier to walk away. And I'd won. The first thing I did was open the desk drawers. Most were empty, but in the bottom right, I found Mark's old nameplate. Director of Operations, Mark Henderson. I held it for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened. All the credit he'd stolen. All the people he'd undermined. All the chances he'd had to do the right thing. I placed it carefully in the box with his other belongings. Security would dispose of it. Then I pulled out the nameplate I'd ordered yesterday, after seeing that org chart preview. Director of Operations, Lauren Cole. I set it on the edge of the desk, running my finger over the engraved letters. It felt like closure. Like proof. Like justice. An email notification appeared on my computer. From the SVP. "Before Monday's meeting, there's something you need to see." Attached was a document titled Anonymous Employee Feedback, Operations Department. I opened it with curiosity. Inside were statements from 23 employees. Every one of them detailed experiences similar to mine. Credit theft. Favoritism. Blocked promotions. Retaliation. Mark hadn't just targeted me. He'd been systematically undermining the entire department for years. And now, finally, everyone would have the chance to move forward. To be recognized. To grow. That's what I would focus on as director. Not revenge. But restoration. The company-wide town hall was scheduled for Thursday. I arrived early, unsure where to sit now that my role had changed. The SVP, Thomas Kavanaugh, spotted me and waved me toward the front row. "Leadership sits up here," he said with a smile. The meeting started with standard updates. Financial performance. Client wins. Strategic initiatives. Then Thomas shifted topics. "I want to address something that's been on everyone's mind. Last week, we made significant leadership changes in our operations department. These changes were the result of a thorough investigation into management practices and ethical concerns." The room was completely silent. One person in this organization demonstrated extraordinary courage by documenting serious policy violations and bringing them to our attention. That person risked retaliation, professional damage, and personal stress to do the right thing. He looked directly at me. Lauren Cole not only uncovered critical gaps in our operational leadership, but she did so with professionalism and integrity that should serve as a model for us all. The applause started slowly, then built. People stood. I felt my face burning, embarrassed by the attention but also deeply moved. As a result of Lauren's actions, we've implemented new reporting mechanisms, updated our promotion review processes, and committed to more transparent leadership evaluation. This is what accountability looks like. After the meeting, people approached me with their own stories. Quietly, carefully, they told me about times they'd almost spoken up but hadn't. "You gave us permission to demand better," one analyst said. That's when I understood. This wasn't just about me anymore. Friday evening, I left the office for the first time as a director. The elevator was empty when I stepped in, and I watched the numbers climb. Not down to the parking garage, but up to the executive floor for one final check of my new office. The doors opened and I walked through the quiet floor, past Patricia's office, past the conference rooms where so much had happened. My nameplate gleamed in the low light. I touched it once more, then turned to leave. As I waited for the elevator again, I thought about the Lauren from 3 months ago. The one who'd heard Mark call her replaceable and worked harder instead of speaking up. The one who'd trained her own replacement without question. The one who'd almost resigned rather than fight. That Lauren wouldn't recognize me now. The elevator arrived and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the polished metal. I was smiling. Not because I'd won. Not because Mark had lost. But because I'd done something harder than either of those things. I'd refused to accept someone else's definition of my worth. I'd documented the truth when it would have been easier to ignore it. I'd stood up when standing up felt impossible. And I'd never raised my voice to do it. The elevator doors opened on the lobby. I walked out into the evening air, knowing that Monday would bring new challenges. But for tonight, I let myself feel what I'd earned. Not just a promotion. Not just recognition. But the knowledge that integrity still mattered. That truth still won. That standing up for yourself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. I'd reclaimed everything they'd tried to take from me. And I'd done it exactly the way it should be done. With receipts, with dignity, and with my head held high.